So in Phoebe's reading this morning, she asked each of us, or she talked about for herself, the gratitude list, and she mentioned when she best remembers it. And I'm sure that, like me, each of you thought about when you've written a gratitude list, or how you go about it, or when you go about it. And that's a great place to start. Right there in that point of realizing that there are ways to expand our gratitude lists. I know that it's something that I've trained myself to do in the moments where I'm catching myself thinking too negatively and going, oh man, I'm doing this to myself. Okay, let me start with the gratitude list. So one of our gratitudes was this, or my gratitude, but I know yours too, so I can even speak for you in this one, was last fall when we were in Canada. It was absolutely breathtaking up there, and I am so grateful for all the scenes and the views and the nature and the hikes and the wildlife that was around us. But I'm also grateful for the time that we spent in Halifax with a group of Science of Mind people. It was an opportunity to sit down to lunch. We thought we were going with just one of them that lived there, that we had made plans with. But it turned out that our spiritual leader and her partner and a bunch of friends that went to the same church as our friend were around and all willing to show up for lunch. So we all had a great lunch, great conversation, got to know each other better, shared ideas about Science of Mind. Well, at some point during the lunch, our friend, who is a Science of Mind practitioner, Pat Watson, and who is a live wire at every conference and convention, talking with everybody there, walked around and gave out these nice cards. Now, you should have each gotten one of these cards today that says on it what our title is. Who you are and what you do is greatly appreciated. Now, you might think that our talk today is going to be about us as a community and appreciating each one's participation, but that isn't what it's about. We're talking about what those words mean. Who you are and what you do is greatly appreciated. When she first gave out the cards, I asked her about it because it really touched me when I read those words. And I'm curious too, so you can share later if you're so willing, as to when you first read those words or heard those words if you're online, what they meant to you. How did you take those words in? So I'm curious about that, and I'm going to share with you my first thoughts. My first thoughts when I read that were, just as I am. Those words imply that there's nothing that you need to do and nothing that you need to be or say in order to be loved. Just as I am. Just as you are. Those were my first thoughts, and then my second thoughts were, oh my gosh, and I can give that to other people too. I have the power to give that to other people, just like Pat did. Now, I asked her about the cards, and she said, well, I just wrote them, made the cards, and I carry them around in my purse, and I hand them out to people as I go through life. And I was like, oh my goodness, I love that. because I know what I thought and what I felt receiving the card. And I said, I just love that. And we talked about it for a while, and she told me some stories about people she'd met along the way that she'd given the cards to, and she gave one to our hostess and to our waitress. And I thought, wow, this is going to make a great lesson one day, and everybody can get a card, but I guess I'll have to make my own. No, she said, I carry them in my purse, like lots of them, so here, have a handful of them. So, oh, wonderful. So not only can I have enough to give out down here in Daytona from way up there in Halifax, but I can give them along the way too. I can spread them along the way in life. That's powerful. Who you are and what you do is greatly appreciated. No expectations, no rules, just appreciation. And for me, that was really what the reading was about today. Gratitude is another word for appreciation. So right here in this room, each one of us is a unique being. Collectively, we recognize our differences, and still we are able to provide the space of love that states who you are and what you do is greatly appreciated. Dennis Merritt Jones, religious science leader and reverend, wrote, an apple a day may help keep the doctor away, but then again, so will a positive self-image. That is just so true. At any given moment, we have the freedom to share words with each other that help to reinforce the positive self-image. Now, of course, I do understand that it is an inside job. We can't do it for someone else. And we all know people who make us feel warm about ourselves. Instantly, when I was thinking about that idea, a beautiful face came to mind, who I see as someone who every time she meets anyone, I can just see them just light right up as soon as they see her, because she just makes everyone around her feel so important and so good. And each one of us has the power within us to do that for each other. Through words, through small gifts, through smiles, through behaviors, through little cards that magnify the warmth that we already have within us and appreciation for another human being. Voltaire wrote, appreciation is a wonderful thing. It makes what is excellent in others belong to us as well. I concur. Every time we empower others to feel good about themselves, we feel the benefit of the excellence made as love and oneness. These words have been stated that understanding yourself is power, loving yourself is freedom, forgiving yourself is peace, and being yourself is bliss. Who you are and what you do is greatly appreciated.
Karen Drucker wrote a great song. She says, you are the heart, you are the hands, you are the voice of spirit on earth, and who you are and all you do is a blessing to the world. I love that idea. We sing that song quite frequently here, and we'll probably do it later today. But I think it's a great affirmation. We change the tense to I am the heart, I am the hands, I am the voice of spirit on earth, and who I am and all that I do is a blessing to the world. We could also turn it into a mantra, just say, I'm a blessing, I'm a blessing, I'm a blessing. It has great power. Try it. I am a blessing, I am a blessing. Say, I am appreciated, I am appreciated, I am appreciated, I am appreciated. Does that feel good? Remember, all you are is far greater than your physical parameters. And all you do is inclusive of your thoughts, which is tied to universal intelligence. So you're far more extensive and expansive than your brain activity and your physical activities. You are greater sometimes than you realize. If we are created in the image and likeness of God, we are spiritual beings, and if we are literally like God, we are divine beings, having human experience. It is challenging to take that statement, we are created in the image and likeness of God, literally, unless we alter our perception of what God is, and of course what we are, and align the two together beyond this physical characteristic that we find ourselves. And we know God transcends physical essence, and we are made in the image and likeness of that essence. God is the first cause, the prototype of all infinite life, and we are of that essence. That's our divine truth. If we were created out of divine unformed substance, every little element of who we are is descended from divinity. That means that we are both figuratively and literally the heart, the hands, and the voice of God in this world. Now, it would probably be presumptuous for us to assume there are some parts of God that are inessential or insignificant, yet we may not think that we, individually, are important, valuable, or needed in the cosmic realm of things. But if each of us is a unique individualization of divinity, each of us has a unique purpose in the divine plan. We are each a perfect facet of the divine light showing up in the world around us. Each of us is needed so that the full spectrum of the presence of all that God is can be seen and felt in the world. So why is it so easy for us to see Gandhi, Jesus, Mother Teresa, the Pope, the Dalai Lama, and so on as important, and yet we don't see ourselves as important? They were and are just human, and so are we. They had divine qualities, and so do we. It's important, and it's even essential for us to realize that all that we are and all that we do is not only appreciated, but valuable and needed in the world. Who we are and all we do is a blessing to the world.
Yes, it definitely is. So, do you ever have moments where you feel that importance, that value, that goodness, that appreciation so fully that you just can't contain it? Anybody have that experience? I know I have. Well, there's a great story about a man who could not contain his exuberance about life, about spirit. It's a story that Shirley Caesar put into a song. If you don't know who she is, she was called the Queen of Gospel Music, and she actually sang at the White House. And the song that I'm referring to is a story that she told as a song called Hold My Mule. So the story goes like this. There was an 86-year-old man named John, and he joined a very uptight, spiritually dead church. And from the moment that he joined that church, he disturbed the entire congregation. He disrupted every service and each and every person. He would come in every week singing and dancing up and down the aisles, all around the pews and the people. And he would even dance up and down the aisles when the ministers were giving the message. Now that would be the perfect time for us to have asked one of you to do that, wouldn't it? I wonder who would have dared, who would have stepped outside that box. I see some of you looking at each other. Well, John was doing that. He was disrupting everyone. And he was doing it so completely that the deacons actually got up and went over and tried to contain him. But when they grab a hold of his arms, he'd kick up his feet into the air. He was just ecstatic with life. And so the deacons got together and they decided that they needed to intervene. They talked amongst themselves and they said, what part of John doesn't know how to act when he goes to church? And they were totally confused. They wondered how he could not understand that they had very important people at their services and they should not be disrupted. They were there for a purpose and it wasn't for John's enthusiasm. So they decided that they'd go out to his house. So they piled into their cars and they all went out to his house and they pulled up to his old shack and they saw him out plowing the fields behind his old mule. And so they walked through the field, and as they approached him, John said, I know why you've come here, deacons. You've come here to tell me that I cannot dance and sing in church. And they said, well, John, that's absolutely right. But also, if you don't stop dancing and singing in church, then we're going to have to put you out of the church. And John said, well, then I guess you're going to have to put me out. But before you do, I want to tell you why I sing and dance. He said, look at all the land around us right here. Look at this glorious field that I'm plowing and the food it's going to produce. That's all from God. He gave this to me to work. And I am happy about that. And he said, and just think about my children. I have lots of children. And they've never caused me a smidge of worry. Now some of us can't really say that. But John did. And he said, I've never had to go to the courthouse and I've never had to go to the cemetery. My children are out there thriving in the world. And I am happy about that. But you don't want me to dance in church? All these glorious, wonderful things that are happening in the world and in nature. And you don't want me to dance? He said, I'm still able to harvest my own crops and able to walk behind my mule. And he said, well, deacons, if you don't want me to sing and dance in your church, then hold my mule. And he went up and passed the reins to them, and he said, because I'm going to sing and dance right now, because that's the way I give thanks to God, right here and right now. And he danced in the field. Now John felt so appreciative of the life that he had that he couldn't contain it. He had to express it through his song and his dance. And he had an overwhelming sense of sharing it in that way. So groups that we are part of, even spiritual communities such as the one John attended, can put us in a pigeonhole of what is right, what is considered holy or appropriate, what is acceptable in life. And like David alluded to previously, that puts God in a box. In knowing our oneness and our allness with Spirit, we accept the variety that shows up in our unity. If God is good with the variety, then who are any of us to disparage it? When we work toward finding a resolution, like they could have done with John, instead of just kicking him out, now maybe he would have ended up leaving, that happens, but maybe they could have found a resolution. What comes to my mind is that they could have encouraged John to get up and sing loudly and dance down the pews during the song times, if he so wished to dance. And he could be told who you are and what you do is greatly appreciated. Yes?
Well, I don't know about you, but I don't always think that what I think about is important to the general goings-on of the world. In fact, I usually prefer that others don't know what I'm thinking about. And when I'm reminded that every thought is a prayer, I'm often embarrassed that God has been privy to my darkest secret thoughts. And I feel I need to apologize or at least make a disclaimer to God that what I said and what I was thinking wasn't really meant as a prayer. And I've come to the conclusion and realization that of all the things I do on a regular basis, thought is by far the most predominant, constant thing that I do. Even when I'm doing other things, I'm thinking about what I'm doing, and sometimes I can even think about something while I'm doing something else. And I have the idea here that I'm thinking about the fact that I'm doing one thing and doing something, thinking about something else, and then, oh my gosh, it kind of boggles my mind. I have to go back and think about that. So when it comes to realizing that all that I do is appreciated, I realize a tremendous responsibility to think in a more productive manner. If I'm constantly thinking all the time, maybe I should think in a more productive manner. I spend a lot of time thinking, and I've gotten good at disciplining my thought patterns. I've trained my brain to stay positive and productive as much as possible. But I also spend a significant amount of time daydreaming. Sometimes I feel kind of guilty, or at least disappointed, about the percentage of time I have spent aimlessly pondering. And then I remind myself that the greatest part of my daydreaming is spent in imagination. And then I can write off that time as actually productive, because I consider imagination an essential part of creating the life that I desire. Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge. So I'm kind of in good company, am I not? So I guess it's important to pay close attention to what I'm imagining. My daydreaming thoughts could be more important than I actually thought. As Ernest Holmes said, something to think about, don't you think? Ernest Holmes also said, the more power one gives to it, their thought, the more completely they believe that their thought has power, the more power will it have. I've actually created what I think is a new spiritual practice. I've always liked meditation, quieting the mind and eliminating extraneous chatter thoughts, and focusing, sometimes seeking divine inspiration. And my new spiritual practice I call spiritual contemplation. It's quieting the mind, eliminating reflective thought and chatter from the environment around me, and focusing in on the inner conversation that's going on in my own head. Listening to my own thoughts. Remember, Ernest Holmes says, the more power one gives to their thought, the more completely they believe that this thought has power, the more power will it have. It begins to snowball because it's infused and empowered with universal intelligence. Who I am and what I do and everything I think is a blessing to the world.
And I'm sure glad that you do ponder and contemplate, because that mind comes up with a lot of good ideas. And because it has been said that appreciation is the highest form of prayer. Appreciation. So the more that we're thinking about what and who and ideas and ways of being that we appreciate, we are praying all the time. It's said that it is the highest form of prayer, for it acknowledges the presence of good wherever you shine the light of your thankful thoughts. And John F. Kennedy wrote, as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. So as you ponder and contemplate and pray and appreciate this week, remember you, who you are, and what you do is greatly appreciated. And so it is.
So it is.